Welcome. This is lesson 11. In this lesson we'll be talking about the TS counters, the different counters the transmitter use, the different counters used by the transmitter. If you enjoy my tutorial, please subscribe to my channel. Then you know I have other tutorials on UART and SPI, though those were non-audio. There was no sound. I didn't explain in those videos, but it's quite understanding for the VHDL code associated with it. So this is the transmitter counter. You can see the verilog code at projectfpga.com/tcp. Select the transmitter counter. You see the code for the transmitter counter. So here we are going to talk about the counters. There are only three counters total used in the transmitter. There are one, the neighbor count. Remember, neighbor means 4 bits. The byte count, that is 8 bits, and the delay CLC count. So these are the only 3 counters we use. So I think it's a little bit easy to understand these counters. So we are going to treat them one after the other. This is by far the simplest part of this tutorial. These counters very easy to understand once you understand the state machine that we did in the previous tutorial. So let's talk about this NIP counts. What are they used for and how to set and reset them. So we already saw when they were used in the last tutorial. When we used this signal, NIP count equal to 15. We use it to go into the state preamble, into the state data. That is, if the data is in state preamble, then the enable counts up to 15. Once it reaches to 15, it enters the state data. So let me show you in our state machine, the last state machine we did. So remember this enable counter here. For you to go into this state data transmission, you must be in the state preamble for you to go into state data, and the enable count has to be equal to 15. So this is where we got that signal here. NIP count equal to 15. They also have NIP count equal to 7. So we are going to learn about this NIP counter, how they are being generated. So this multiplexer here, this one is responsible for resetting it. Whenever it's on, you can see it sets it to 0. Then the second multiplexer is one that is responsible for the incrementing, for the counting. Whenever I set to 1, it increments it by 1. This is the adder here that does the incrementing. So let's see how this NIP count is being reset. So there are a million ways to reset it. This is the OR gate that does the resetting. So you can see that there are a lot of options for resetting this enable count. So let's see them one after the other. So one way to reset it is by one. Let's see this first one. When there is a state jam, when there is a collision, the enable count is going to reset. Then let's see another condition. When you are at the start IPG, whenever you want to move into a new frame, whenever you are moving into a new frame, this start IPG comes on. Whenever start IPG comes on, you are going to wait for you are going to enter the state IPG, the interpacket gap state. So whenever this start IPG signal comes on, you set it to 0. That means you are going into a new state. Therefore, reset it and start counting from the beginning. So the next condition is this, the start FCS. Whenever you want to enter the state FCS, you reset it again. The start FCS introduces us to the state FCS. So whenever this state FCS, start FCS comes on, you reset it and start counting again. So another condition is when you are in the state idle, set it to 0. Now this is not the start, the state. Whenever you are idle, you are not doing anything, do not count. That is what he's saying. When you are not doing anything, do not count yet. Then set it to 0. So this is the last. Whenever you are in state differ, whenever this start differ comes on, that is whenever there is a collision, you want to move into this state differ state, you reset it also. So more option. Let's see this 3 input AND gate. What is happening here? So see another condition. One is when this signal is on. So what is this signal here? Let's see. This signal that is here is called excessive differ count enable. X different excessive differ enable. It comes from the register. When you set this bit to 1, it means that whenever you are in the state differ, that is when the transmitting line is busy, whenever the transmitting line is busy, you go into state differ. So, and probably are in active transmission, it has to wait for a particular number of time. So that time, see the time here is given here. So whenever this enable counts here, this is a comparator. Whenever the enable count equals that time, this signal turns on, excessive differ count. This signal is going to come on to tell you that the enable count has waited for this length of time. And therefore, if you set this excessive differ enable in the register, it means ignore, continue waiting. But assuming you didn't set this excessive differ enable in the register, it means that you have reached your maximum waiting time. This is the maximum waiting time, the maximum time of waiting in the maximum waiting time in the state differ. So when you are in state differ, you have your length of time to wait. So let's actually check. I would like to check how long this is. Let me check it in decimal. Let's see how long it is in decimal. So it's going to count 6071 for nib counts. So if we divide it into, it's going to be 3035 byte counts. That is, you are giving the transmitting line 3075 byte counts for the carrier sense to be off. That is, you are giving the transmitting line 3035 counts for it to be idle, for transmission to go on. If it exceeds this time, the enable count exceeds this time, this signal is going to come on. This excessive differ count is going to come on. And if you didn't set it to be, if you didn't allow it, that is, if you set it in a register, this is from the register, while this is from this comparator calculation here. So if we set this in a register, it means excessive differ enable, wait until forever. But if you didn't set it, it's going to wait for only this, for that 3035 byte counts. So if you wait until there, this comes on, this is going to be on, and when it's on, it's time to reset the nib count to start counting afresh. So the nib count is going to count 3071. So let me check again. Let's see. 3071. This one. for 3071. Then again, let's see another condition for resetting the nib count. This should not be on. That is the end of transmission. If at the end of the transmission and you've waited already for 3071 counts, and then the last condition, you are in state differ. Obviously you have to be in state differ for this to be on. You have to be in state differ for this. If you have to be in state differ, yes. So when you are in state differ, so let's reiterate this condition again. So the condition says, if you are in state differ and you've reached the end of data transmission, that is, you are not transmitting any data, and this last condition, you've waited for 6071 nib counts, start afresh, reset the counter. That is, the counter resets at 6071 counts when you are not transmitting. When you are not transmitting means that this TS start from is not on. TS start from marks the beginning of, marks that the transmission is on. So when you are not transmitting and you are in state differ and you wait up to 6071 counts, reset the counter. Then again, the next condition for resetting it says, if you count up to 15, that is, nib count is 15 and you are in state preamble, reset it. This condition is the condition that moves us to the state data for counting the state data. So remember, we used it in our last tutorial. When we are in state preamble and the nib count is equal to 15, reset, start counting. That is, you now have to start counting for the state data. Reset it and start counting for the state data. So, and now the last one says, if there is a collision, that is a state jam, and you count up to 7, reset it. That is, when there is a collision, once you count to 7, reset. Once you count to 7, reset. So this particular nib count equal to 7, we are going to use it in our next module when we'll be talking about the random byte generator for our transmitter. When there is a collision, the waiting period, we are going to use this nib count equal to 7. So let's see it carefully. This condition, it says, when there is a state jam and you count up to 7, reset it. You start afresh, you count up to 7 again, you reset it until this state jam is over. That is, until the jam is over. So now let's see the conditions for counting. How do we count? Conditions for counting. So this multiplexer does the counting using this OR gate. So this OR gate provides all the different conditions for counting, and there are multiple conditions for counting. So let's see each of these conditions one after another. So the first condition says you must be in any of the state data. You see, you count only when you are in either of the states. That is one condition. The next condition says when there is a state jam, you count in a state jam, and when there is a state jam, you count to 7 and reset. You count to 7, then you reset. You count to 7, then you reset. Then again, when you are in the state pad, you count. So a lot of conditions. When you go to the code, you are going to see all these conditions listed for you. When there is a state back off, you count again. But mind you, the counting has a reset period. There is a reset for it. So take for instance, you know that this counting in the state data, there is a reset before you go into the state data. So when you are counting the state data, you are counting only for the state data. It's not as if you are counting for state data or you are counting for state FCS. So for each of these states, this counting state, know that there is actually a reset condition that comes at the beginning. So whatever is counting is particularly for that state. I hope you understand. Then remember this signal, enable min FL. This is where this signal was generated. Now this is how it's generated. this min FL comes from our register. So when you go to the register, you set this min FL. This is the minimum frame length in bytes. It's recorded in bytes. The minimum frame length in bytes. But here the signal is made in neighbor because we are transmitting the data in neighbor. So we won't set this signal in bytes because data is being sent in neighbor. So that is why this signal is neighbor minimum frame length and not just the minimum frame length in bytes. But in our register we set it in bytes. We are going to set it in bytes. So now how does this signal come up? So what it does is it takes this minimum frame length we set in our register, subtract 4 bytes from it. If you are subtracting 4, it means you are subtracting in bytes. Subtracting 4 bytes from this minimum frame length means you are trying to remove the state FCS, because the state FCS and the state data are counted. They need counts them together. Subtracting them by 4 means you are trying to remove the state FCS counting. Then you shift it to the left by 1. Shifting to the left by 1 means multiplication by 2. That is, at this point we are now converting this minimum frame length to neighbor minimum frame length. These are the points at this point. This is where we shifted it to the left by 1. That is, we multiplied it by 2 and converted it to neighbor. Now this byte, we converted it to neighbor, subtract it by 1, and then compare it with our own neighbor count. This is where we compared it. So if our neighbor count, if the one in the register is less than the one that we've counted, it means that our neighbor have counted more than the one in the register. Therefore this signal comes on. It means that the data is up to size. Whenever this signal comes on, it means that our data has come up to size. And if it comes on, it means skip the state part. And there were other things we use it to do, but one of the major conditions we use it is to skip the state part whenever this neighbor minimum frame length comes on. So then again, let's see our byte count. FF. So keep counting. Then the last condition, let's see this again. This is the same as before. When you are at FFF, and then again this OR gate says if you are in state FCS or you are in state pad and state FCS or state pad and your neighbor count 0 is 1. Okay, wait, let me see this. Okay, take note, this particular AND gate is the one that counts our sent data. So you can see that it counts only on one state. It doesn't count the 2 states. Unlike, see here, only one state is being counted, but in the neighbor count here it counts the 2 states. Watch here, the 2 states are being counted. That is the difference between the neighbor counting and the byte counting. The byte counts only one of the states, so that it ignores the second state. That is how it combines the 2 neighbors to make 1 byte. So this is where we count our state data. So take note, this is how we count our byte counts. And then this last one, which says if it's in state pad or if it's in state FCS and you have reached 11111 all ones, then your neighbor count 0 is 1. Count. I don't really get to understand this very well. Count. So then again, this signal, let's talk about this signal here, the max frame. This huge enable, remember we have the minimum frame length and the maximum frame length. The two of them, you set them in a register. This is the maximum size of frame you can use. You set them in the register. But if you set this bit huge enable, huge means huge enable, it's also from a register. Once you set this huge enable to 1, it means ignore this maximum frame length, send as much frame as you want. That is what this huge enable does. But if you didn't set this huge enable, it means your frame will not exceed this maximum. That is what huge enable does. So you use this max FL and min FL to set the range of your frame size. Max FL and min FL sets your frame size. Huge enable is just there to remove this max FL. Once huge enable is set, you can send as much frame as you like. And if you didn't set huge enable, that is when this bit is going to come on max frame. You've reached your maximum frame. You are going to see how this max frame stops data transmission, because you didn't set huge enable and you've exceeded your maximum frame length. The max frame comes on. So the last one is the delay CLC. Just like we talked earlier, if you are sending huge, we talked about delay CLC count when we are talking about the receiver. The same here. That is, if you are sending a frame that is higher than normal, probably you set this huge enable to 1 and you are sending huge frame length. So delay CLC count is going to come on, and just like we said, it gives only 4 bytes increment from the normal counting, 4 bytes above our normal counting. So after that 4 bytes, the byte count. So during that 4 bytes, this byte count is not expected to go on to count. So that is that. So that is all about the TS counter. So when you go through the code also here, you understand more of what is written here in the code. Please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.